Native American protesters. Students are returning to class this morning for the first time since that confrontation. Sean Spicer is senior advisor and spokesperson for America First PAC and former White House press secretary. Sean, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Sandra.
I know you're a dad, and you look on at that, and you look at these boys several days later after the country really has had a chance to digest and learn more about this story, and you feel for them.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think now that everything has come to light, and we've seen the entirety, or at least much more of this video, here's what we do know. These kids were marching for life. They were waiting for their bus to pick them up. They were approached by a group of racist, anti-Semitic individuals who were yelling epithets at them. That's not in question. This Native American gentleman apparently tried to defuse the situation, but again, he approached them, not the other way around. They just stood there quietly, peacefully, kind of, jumping in. But let's keep in context the entire thing. These are kids. The other two groups of individuals are adults. And yet the rush to judgment by the mainstream media and the folks to the left against these kids and their kids was because, number one, they were marching for life, and that's not cool in the eyes of the mainstream media. And number two is because they were Trump supporters wearing Make America Great hats. If the shoe had been on the other foot, if this had been a group of young students on the left that were protesting some progressive cause, and it was a right-leaning group that had come in, the narrative would be about how these adults were harassing these kids. But somehow the mainstream media has turned it into these kids are bad. And the only reason that I can honestly think of is, one, because they stood up for life, which is not cool in the eyes of the media, and two, because they apparently are Trump supporters.
It's interesting because we just heard a taste of Joy Behar in this sort of admission that she made as to why she thinks this snap judgment occurred. Here she is.
We're desperate to get Trump out of office. That's why.
Not everybody, though.
I think the press jumps the gun a lot because we have so much circumstantial evidence against this guy that we basically are hoping that, Cohen's got the goods and what have you. And so it's wishful thinking.
Evidence. As far as I'm concerned, we still have no Robert Mueller report. We have no report as a result of that investigation. But that was Joy Behar, and it was an admission because we're so desperate to get this president, she said. Do you think there's going to be lessons learned from all this, Sean?
Not really. I mean, we saw it just a few days ago with the BuzzFeed story. I would have thought that a lot of folks in the media would have learned their lesson from jumping on that false bandwagon, but they didn't. And again, remember, it's not Joy Behar going against the president. He's a tough guy. He can handle the hits and the insults. But why are we invoking a bunch of young kids in this debate to make them suffer because of Joy Behar and other members of the media's distrust and hatred of this president? I think that is absolutely wrong. And the idea that one CNN contributor said these kids should be punched in the face. Others talked about other things that should happen to them. Kathy Griffin, a despicable individual who's done tons of reprehensible stuff in the past, talked about how their names should be named. These are children. They are sons and daughters. They went out there to march for life, to do something that they believed in, and they did nothing but stand their ground and just wait for their bus to come. And why are we, by the way, the one thing that's interesting to me, Sandra, in this whole story is that this all was precipitated by an anti-Semitic group that started chanting at these individuals. And all of the folks in the media have left those folks off.
One thing's for sure.
No condemnation from NBC News this morning of them.
When you watch the interviews that these kids gave you, they're kids.
They are.
We'll leave that there for now. I got to ask you about these White House press briefings. We asked Hogan Gidley, the standing deputy press secretary, yesterday on this program about those press briefings and the fact that we haven't seen Sarah Sanders deliver one so far this year. The president weighed in shortly after that interview, said he basically told her not to bother. The reporters are rude to her in that room. She gave an interview on Fox and Friends this morning basically saying, I talk to the press every single day. I just wonder, from someone who used to stand on that podium and knows the importance of delivering that press briefing, did the White House make the right move here?
Look, I think we all have to remember what the goal of the briefing is. It's to speak on behalf of the President of the United States when he is unable to do so for himself. This president, frankly, engages with the president probably more with the media on a regular basis than any president in the past, through pool sprays, through one-on-one meetings, through interviews, et cetera, et cetera. There is no way that you can say that this president is leaving the press wondering what he thinks on any given issue, whether it's directly through interviews and opportunities through his Twitter feed. He is communicating directly with the American people and with members of the press. Sarah doesn't have to go out there and do a briefing if the president's engaging with the press on an almost daily basis. I think the press briefing is to do so in lieu of that. So they're making the right call on this. And the second part that the president brought up is that I think that the briefing turned into a circus, where you've created a bunch of YouTube stars that were B-rate reporters to begin with that had gotten no recognition in the past, and they felt if they acted out, and this has never been about the content of the question. I don't really care about that. They are supposed to ask tough, hard questions. It's about the conduct. They want to make it into a circus. They want to make themselves stars. They want to get viral videos. I get that. But the White House's job is to provide information to the public and the media, and they can do so in much more efficient ways.
All right, Sean Spicer, great to get your take on all those things this morning. Thank you.
You bet, Sandra.
World of sports right now, famed Yankee